This is our 12th video, and we're going to be covering some of the features available in the Properties Editor. And today we're just going to look very briefly at constraints and also at modifiers. Constraints do exactly what they say. They offer a way to link an object to something else to adjust the way it moves or how it works or flows, etc. And each of these has their own settings. There's not enough time to go over all of these individually. However, that said, each of these can be used to help work on your scenes in different ways. For instance, the follow track. So if you have, say, a camera that you want to follow an object, you're going to animate the object. You don't want to have to animate the camera too. You want it to be able to follow it. You could turn on the follow track. You can also do things like limit scale or different options here. We even have a follow path one. So for instance, if I click on this one that says follow path, here I have a target that it's looking for. Well, I don't have anything for this to follow at the moment. If I do Shift A and then let's go down to where it says curve, I'm going to put in a circle and let's scale that circle up a little bit. I'm going to use the tools over here on the side. Okay, so this is the type of curve that I just added, and I'm going to give it a radius of 5. And which is good. I'm going to go and click back on the circle. Now if I go to target and click on this, there's the circle. If I renamed it something else, you'll notice it's now on the path. If I click animate path, we can see, let's see what it does first of all. There we are. It's going around, and it's still going around, and it will continue to go around. And I just made the box follow the path. Pretty straightforward, really easy to get a result out of. When you create a constraint like this, of course you're going to want to leave it open. You can always hit the eyeball to see what's going on with the shape without it versus when it's actually attached to that path. You can shrink this down, so if you have multiple constraints, you can work with that as well. And yeah, you can do lots of different things with this. Some of these, if you're not sure what they do, again, you can always look them up, but usually you're going to be looking for something that you have a purpose for in the first place, and you want to know if there's a tool for it, in which case it's a good place to look. You do notice that I did not click on the animate path on this one. You don't need to do that. It's already animated and it's good to go. Okay, we'll move on to modifiers, and I'm going to actually just undo so that I have just my cube there. We're going to go ahead and exit out the constraint. Modifiers is a section that you'll probably use a lot. There's lots of really useful tools in modifiers. I'm going to actually go into this one. I'm going to tab in, and I'm going to take this cube. I'm going to divide it up and then use a modifier to make designing something a little bit easier and faster. So I'm going to use Control R to split this. I'm going to hit escape so it doesn't divide. I'm going to go over to this side, and I'm just going to select face mode. Right click on this face. I'm going to hit exit or X, not exit, but X, and I'm going to say delete vertices. By deleting the vertices, it took away the edges too, leading up to that point. I have exactly half the cube here. I'm going to go in my modifiers. I'm going to go down to one called mirror. Click on it. Now I have a mirroring, and by default it's in the X direction. I could have, if I turn that off, I don't see it. I could have done Y direction, which is just overlapping itself. Same with the Z direction. Depending on which way you slice your scene, that's what you're going to have. I'm going to do Control R. I'm going to add 2 edge loops here. I'm going to hit Escape. I'm going to go back to face mode, Control Tab, face. I'm going to take this. I'm going to pull this out, and it pulled the rest of it out with it. I'm going to, if I pull this away, you'll notice that it pulls away from the other side too as well. It doesn't bring the whole thing with it because it's just like a mirror dividing the object up. If you extrude, then what's going to happen is if I pull this away, you'll notice that there's a face that was created there, and you might have to click on the eyeball. If you leave that face there, it's going to do some odd things to your model, so I'm going to do X and delete this face. You might want those odd things to happen, you might not, so you can always experiment around. I'm going to turn the eyeball back on. We're going to add another modifier, and because you can stack modifiers, I'm going to add this subdivision surface. Subdivision surface will actually kind of give you an average going over things. It'll smooth things out a little bit. I'm going to minimize this guy for right at the moment. And so here, what I can do is in viewport, if I turn this up, now I have it doing more in my view than in my render. You usually want it doing more in render than in view. If I have a really complicated geometry, I probably don't want to take that view over 2, but maybe when it renders, I want it doing 5, whereas like 5, for instance here, that actually looks really smooth without even applying the smooth to it. If I take it down to 2, and maybe we want this all to appear smooth, so I'm going to select it all, and I'm going to go up to where it says on here Shading and UVs tab. And you can also do this from object mode on the Tools tab, but for right now I'm going to just say Smooth for faces. The last time I tried these different elements, I ended up with pretty close to the same results. I haven't tried playing around with some of the options, but alas, there you go. Okay, so I'm going to undo those last few things I did, but I am going to make sure that it's smooth. And so here it smooth things out. I can still see those lines where it changes polygons, but as I get higher levels of smoothness, this will make it look really, really nice. Again, in the viewport, I don't generally want to run at 5 levels of subdivisions. I actually want to run at maybe 1 or 2. If you think about it, if I subdivide this once, okay, then I'm going to get 4 sections out of it. Okay, if I subdivide it twice, okay, I'm going to get actually I should get 9 because I think it will divide it into 3 by 3. So let's go back to flat here for shading. So here I have 1. It's dividing this panel into 2 and 2 there. And it gets a little bit hard to tell because it's actually some of them from the back panel there. I actually think it might divide it into 4. Let's do this. I'm going to hit E just to see. Yeah, actually, I think it does actually divide it into 4. So actually, at 2 would be 16 because then it divides it again rather than just dividing the original. I forgot about that. So it's kind of exponential growth. So it goes from 1 face on 0 to 4 to 16, okay, and then it's going to go up here to 64, and then it's going to keep increasing exponentially like that, and it's going to get pretty large over time. If I apply this, for instance, can't be applied while in that mode, so I'm going to go here, I'm going to hit apply, I'm going to tab out, and here I have 1,024 faces. That makes sense. That made it way overly complicated than what I needed. So I'm going to undo that, and actually I'm going to, call that good. So I'm going to add that modifier back. When I undid it, I actually took away that modifier. So I'm going to add subdivision surfaces back. And I'm going to go up to just 3 levels for this since I don't have it that complicated. You notice that with that face, there I get this odd bending there. If I take this out, go exit, I'm going to say delete faces. And now I have the start of a nice little like foot or something, I guess. It's very odd. Okay, so modifiers, really handy. There's lots of different ones. If I go to like ocean or fluid simulator, those are 2 different types of simulations. I can get some different effects from that. These are not bad to kind of mess around with and try. Solidify is going to give it a little bit of an extra edge to it. Of ones that you'll probably want to use, the subdivision surface is very important. Mirroring is very important. Array can be really, really handy. I'm going to just undo a lot of these steps here really quick. Actually, I'm going to tab out and undo, and that way it'll bring me back to my cube and get rid of my other modifiers. I'm going to click on Array, and with Array, in these last couple minutes, so this is the last modifier I'll cover. In our next video, we'll cover these next things here. What I'm going to do is instead of, actually I'll show you these first. So I can add the number of cubes I want. I can offset them as I want. I can offset them in different directions. I can turn off that. This is relative offset, so it's going to change based on the size of the shape, to constant, where if I always want those shapes to be a certain length apart, then it'll do that. There's another type of offset you can do called object offset. What I'm going to do is I'm going to do Shift A, and I'm going to go down. I'm going to add an empty, and so I'm going to say arrows. And so now I have an empty that is just a way, it's not going to be something that's renderable in a scene, but I can link that to my cube. So for instance, I go over here, I'm going to say object offset, I'm going to say empty, and then let's do just 60. So I'm going to click in here, type 60, enter, like that. Now, since it's linked to the empty, if I go back, I'm going to use my outliner just to select the empty because they're occupying the same space there. It might be a little bit easier. As I move my empty up, I moved all of the other ones up. If I hit S to scale and then also move up, so I'm going to hit S, I'm going to start to scale, I can get different results from my empty just by doing that. If I hit R for rotate, as my empty rotates, it'll rotate each of the cubes progressively more, and you can get some really weird effects going on there. You could even animate your empty so that you could have, maybe you're making a digital octopus, I don't know, whatever you're doing. It can be a fun way to really kind of mess around with things. I'm going to go, and I did say that was my last one, but in closing here, I will add one more thing to my cube. I'm going to add a, where is it? Wireframe. And now I can see this all the way through. I'm going to go back to my empty, select it, and as I change that, I can see all those lines change with it as well. And if I rotate it from different views and get different effects, I think it's just kind of an artistic way to play around with it.